you for joining this webinar on the cost of living crisis and how food innovators are fighting back to the challenges, the multiple challenges that are impacting on local food producers and consumers due to the increasing of energy prices. This is a big challenge at European level. And from the one hand, local food producers are struggling to stay on the market because of the increasing of inputs prices. And on the other side, on the other hand, consumers are likely to address the purchasing to cheaper, highly processed and less healthy food. This issue is being debated within our consortium, the Food Shift 2030 project partners, and we are keen on widening this debate with a larger audience. I'm Francesca Volpe from Siam Bari, and the lab leader of one of the 9 food accelerator labs set up in the Food Shift 2030 project. So the webinar will explore different experiences implemented at a local level, which provide some responses to this challenge, to the cost of living crisis. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to Julia Kirby-Smith from Better Food Traders, Sophie Patterson from Food Plymouth, and Karen Fuller, who is the lab leader of the Food Accelerator Lab in Berlin. We will have done a discussion with the audience, with a Q&A session and the final wrap-up of this webinar. Some few operational instructions. The webinar will be recorded, and you can use the Q&A section to direct address questions to speakers by using the bottom at the right down in the Zoom screen, and you can use the chat for general technical issues, and of course follow us on Twitter and the other social networks. So I will start with Julia. Please, Julia, the floor is yours, and thank you for sharing.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen if the other participants sharing could stop.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to go into full screen mode. Right, good morning. Great to be here. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm here from Better Food Traders in the UK. We are a UK-wide network that supports and promotes ethical food retailers. And that includes shops, food hubs, market stalls, anyone who's trading in fresh produce can be a member. We currently have 65 members with over 600 delivery routes, drop-off points and shops. And our members provide those important routes to market for organic and agroecological growers. Our members also commit to paying fair prices. And through this, we enable organic farmers to thrive. And that is really our mission. We ask our members to adhere to certain standards and to commit to these. So all of our members follow a social and environmental mission. They have that triple bottom line of profit, people, and planet. Our members must have a written sourcing policy with a focus on local organic farms, and none of our members do any sort of air freight at all. And we also ask that members have systems in place to track their spend on these 3 different categories. So organic, agroecological, non-organic, UK versus non-UK, and whether the produce is own grown, bought directly from a grower, or bought through a wholesaler. So that's a little bit about me and Better Food Traders, but we're here to talk about the cost of living and this crisis which is affecting everyone. And some people are also calling it the cost of business, cost of doing business crisis. So what is the context? Well, we're seeing rising costs affecting both growers and traders in this field. But the tricky thing is retailers are the ones caught in the middle. Traders are very reluctant to increase their prices and make prices even higher for their customers. But that means any price rises from their suppliers have to be absorbed. So they're stuck in the middle at the same time as experiencing rising energy costs, wages going up, and all sorts of other inflationary pressures. The alternative food system does not have the economies of scale or the financial buffers of the supermarket system. And the fact is that if retailers disappear, those routes to market disappear. But there are some positives. So a lot of our traders are small, nimble businesses. And if you're smaller, you can adapt quicker than some of the big conglomerates and the bigger chains. So there are some positives. One thing is that organic growers, interestingly, are not exposed to all of the same kind of price rises that many traditional growers are seeing. So for example, with fertilizer costs globally have gone up 30% since the start of this year. And that's on top of an 80% price rise last year. So there is a hope and a chance that the retail prices of organic versus traditional produce will begin to narrow. And it will be really interesting to see if that begins to happen and organic produce becomes relatively more affordable in comparison to conventional produce. Small businesses can change their business models more quickly. We saw this during COVID. We saw people very quickly adapting to do home deliveries or changing the kind of produce that they offered, expanding their range to add eggs or bread or other things to top up with your veg box. So that adaptability should be seen as a huge strength and something we should all be looking to build on. Likewise, local growers and local traders can call on their local community. We have some really lovely examples where we've seen members of our network asking customers to help them with deliveries, particularly delivering to people who are in need, who maybe can't get out of their house as they did during COVID, or other accessibility issues. We have members who are growers that run veg box schemes, and they have volunteers who come and help with the picking and packing. So again, in these tough times, where you're built and connected in with your community, you can draw on those community resources much more easily. So how can we work together as well? I think this is really important, and it's one of the best ways to improve efficiencies and lower costs and work together. So there's a really good example of this which has happened in London, and it's called the Better Food Shed. Now, Better Food Traders itself grew out of an organisation called Growing Communities. Growing Communities has operated in London for about 15 plus years, and it started out as a veg box scheme. It then added a farmer's market. It then added lots of different sort of interconnectedness between the farmers who were coming to that market, then supplying produce to their veg box scheme. And then they got to the point where they had so much, so many logistics going on that they created something called the Better Food Shed. And this is a non-profit wholesale organisation, essentially. It's a logistics hub which allows farmers all around the UK to come and deliver to this little green diamond that you can see on the map. And that is their warehouse in Dagenham on the edge of London. So growers and farmers come in with their produce to this main warehouse point. And from there, the Better Food Shed sorts out all the orders and deliveries to 10 veg box schemes, which are the 10 red circles, plus a number of different shops and traders who are all members of Better Food Traders. And this has really allowed farmers and growers to rationalise their delivery process. They just have to do one journey, deliver to the Better Food Shed, and they can go home again. It reduced time and costs for farmers. And also it's allowed small traders to top up from a wholesaler called Langridge, who have a minimum spend amount. So you have to spend, I can't remember, something like £200 per order. And for lots of smaller shops, that wasn't really a workable amount. But now that they can buy through the Better Food Shed, that economy of scale makes it viable. So it's a win-win for lots of people. And Sarah Green, who's one of our favourite organic growers in Essex, she called this an absolute game changer. It really made the difference for her operations. Other ways that we can work together. So Better Food Traders itself is creating strong local networks. So we have a network in Sheffield, South Yorkshire, where there are a whole mixture of traders and growers who are coming together and beginning to have localized meetings and talk about how they can share logistics and do things collaboratively. And similarly in Cambridge and also in the Southwest. Just to go back to the top point on that slide, actually, so I think it's worth noting that, you know, we often talk about short supply chains, and that's what we're all striving for in comparison with the enormous and cumbersome supermarket system. But supply chains can still be short with maybe one or two middle steps. You know, I think the Better Food Shed example is a really good example of one not-for-profit wholesale organizer coming in and taking that burden away from farmers and streamlining processes. So I think we need to think creatively about how short supply chains can be short, but not, you know, they don't have to be the farmer does everything and sells direct to customers. And then finally, as a network, Better Food Traders, we are helping people work together. We enable knowledge sharing, advice and support. And some of that we bring in outside speakers and we offer online training. But we also do a lot of work to bring people together at meetings where they can share their own knowledge. You know, this is the thing, that we have so many people operating in the same ways, doing same kinds of business, but scattered all over the country, and everyone has a huge amount of knowledge and advice that they can give to each other within our network. So to go to the question of supporting citizens during this cost of living crisis. So I just want to draw your attention to a programme called Bridging the Gap, which is being run by Sustain, who many of you will know. They've got funding for 3 years from the National Lottery, and they're going to be developing this programme to explore different ways of subsidising or creating financial incentives or creating different mechanisms to bridge that gap between the prices of organic produce and conventional produce. They're looking particularly in an urban setting, but they're going to take 3 years to really trial lots of different pilots to see what works and to kind of see what the levers are that really enable people on lower incomes to buy this kind of produce, and also what the barriers might be. Like, even if cost is removed as an issue, are there any other barriers that are putting people off from buying organic produce? In terms of our own work at Better Food Traders, we have spoken to lots of our members, and we have reports from them of all different kinds of innovative ways that they're supporting citizens themselves. And I've kind of sorted these into roughly 4 different types of support that we can see being offered. So there are government schemes, there are charity programs that traders are linking up with, there are community initiatives, and then there are things that are led by businesses themselves. So to give you a few specific examples, Cambridge Organic, their veg boxes can be paid for with government Healthy Start vouchers. So this is a government scheme, and Cambridge Organic and likewise, another local government initiative. So in Devon, one of the local councils there is subsidising organic veg and actually having that as something that GPs can prescribe as something that people need in their diet. And then they can go to one of 6 or 7 different providers and go and get their vegetables for free because it's prescribed by their doctor. Talking about the sort of charitable aspect, so Enfield VegCo donate to a local charitable pantry. This is very much like a food bank, but where people pay a small amount and then they get to choose what they actually take home. So they're using that charity as their means to support citizens. And then some other examples where it's really customers and the community themselves who are coming together. So Sutton Community Farm asked customers to donate a veg box. And through that, they have brought in enough support from their customers to supply 25 boxes for free every week. The community farm in Somerset, customers can add £3 voluntarily, and they've raised over £15,000 through this, which is amazing. And then Growing Communities, who I mentioned earlier, as the sort of the beginnings of where Better Food Shed came from. So they set up a food credit scheme, and customers of theirs have donated a massive £33,000 over the last 2 years. And then finally, there are businesses who themselves are looking to support people. So they're taking that burden and that cost on themselves. So VegBox people in Manchester have created a low-cost root veg box, which I think they're selling almost at cost price, but it means that people who really can't afford more than that can come and buy organic root vegetables at a really, really amazing price. So that's enough from me. I just wanted to put up my different contact details, so feel free to drop me a message after this. And thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Julia, for this interesting presentation and for the positive aspects you shared with us. I'm very much impressed about the small businesses' resilience through networking and cooperation. And now I will give the floor to Sophie Patterson from Food Plymouth. Please, Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesca. Hello, everybody. Bear with me 1 second whilst I share my screen. Oh, no, sorry, wrong button. Slideshow, that's what we want. Excellent. Can everybody see that okay? Hopefully so. Okay, hello,
Yes.
everybody. Thanks, Francesca. Brilliant. Thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation to present not only on behalf of local food partnerships and Food Plymouth in particular, but also as a recently joined city fellow in the Food Shift 2030 programme. We're really excited to have joined earlier this year and look forward to learning from cities all across Europe about the amazing work that's going on. So, first things first, some of you may already be aware of what a local food partnership is, but for those who aren't, this is a lovely photo taken back in July this year at the Sustainable Food Places Day of Celebration in Action. And they bring together over 80 different local food partnerships across the UK. And our work is really all about making healthy and sustainable food a defining characteristic of where people live. This means that local food partnerships are cross-sector, bringing together local authorities, public sector bodies, third sector organisations, businesses and academic institutions to develop a shared vision, strategy and action plan to work in a coordinated way to achieve these. So over 80 places across the UK currently part of the Sustainable Food Places movement, And that is led by Sustain, Food Matters and the Soil Association, with funding from the National Lottery Community Fund and the Esme Fairbairn Foundation. So we're really pleased in Plymouth to be part of such an amazing network across the UK. So Food Plymouth itself, actually, we've been going for quite a long time, 12 years at the moment, founded in 2010. We are Plymouth's dedicated local food partnership. We're part of the Sustainable Food Places Network. We achieved the Bronze Award, which is a tiered set of awards that all of the Sustainable Food Places Network members will be working their way through. So we were one of the first places to achieve Bronze Award in 2015. And we're really keen to accelerate our way through silver and up to gold, hopefully by 2024. So we're also really excited to have joined the Future 2030 programme earlier this year. And we've been working to support the Plymouth Food Aid Network, of which I'll mention more in a little while, since 2018. And you can see here just some of the campaigns that we're also involved with, such as the Veg Cities movement, which is encouraging increased consumption and increased accessibility of fruit and veg in, I think, over 30 different veg cities and places, again, as part of the Sustainable Food Places movement across the UK. So what we're actually working on as Sustainable Food Places, as local food partnerships, is split into 6 core areas: food governance and strategy, building a good food movement that's citizen-led, that all of our communities can play a role in, healthy food for all, increasing that accessibility to healthy, sustainably grown food, supporting and strengthening our sustainable food economies where we are. Again, that feeds into catering and procurement, which is another key area for us, and looking at food for the planet, which is all about how we grow our food all the way through to what we do with any food waste as well. So what's actually been happening on the ground in Plymouth? Well, coming through the coronavirus pandemic, we've really lurched straight into another crisis. I already mentioned Plymouth Food Aid Network, which is being supported by Food Plymouth, as Plymouth's local food partnership, working closely with Plymouth City Council. So we're really pleased to be able to work together with our local authority to make sure that we're coordinating efforts in this space. And what is central to our approach is something called a cash first approach, which was developed by the Independent Food Aid Network. And what that means is that at the first point of contact, for anybody who might be struggling to access food, we are able to showcase and signpost to different resources, which will make sure that already people are aware of and are actually accessing all of the potential benefits that they might be able to, that there's a whole systems approach, again, really to making sure that there's wraparound support. We know that food insecurity is very often accompanied by financial insecurity as the root cause, and also potentially in these times, energy and fuel insecurity as well. So through the Plymouth Food Aid Network, which is, I think, around 40 organisations strong at the moment, we saw a massive ramp up in the number of organisations as part of the network over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. They are still very much active, and people can learn about them through a community food access map, and again be signposted to them through resources like the Worrying About Money leaflet here. We're also building and increasing community resilience as well. So alongside all of the activities in terms of actually providing emergency food aid, there's a real focus on increasing community resilience in Plymouth at the moment. And that's, again, with a view to ultimately being able to transition away from food aid and more towards food access and food agency. Ultimately, the Plymouth Food Aid Network would rather not exist. We ultimately want to have a city where people are able to access, existing financial entitlements, are able to find ways to not necessarily always have to depend on that emergency food aid, though we recognise that's not going to be the case. We've got very, very hard times ahead, so that is going to be our reality for a lot of time. still to come, unfortunately. So Cooperation Town is a really exciting new development here in Plymouth, and that's all about developing food buying co-ops in our communities at a neighbourhood level. So it's very much grassroots. It's come from the Cooperation Town movement in London, and we're really pleased to have just recruited in Plymouth with the help of Plymouth City Council, based at Four Greens Community Trust, a food community organiser role. So they are going to be helping neighbourhoods to establish their own community food bulk buying co-ops, which will be able to provide food at a much reduced cost, and sort of sitting alongside emergency food aid provision. There is also a big push towards increasing people's skills, knowledge and confidence around how they can adapt to increased energy prices. For example, with a slow cooker roadshow, we have organisations in our food partnership who are running different workshops and sessions at community centres at the moment, in combination with housing associations, for example, so that people can learn how they can cook healthy, nutritious food at reduced cost using equipment like a slow cooker, for example. So these are just some of the things that are happening in Plymouth right now. And we know that similar things are happening across the country. There was a cost of living webinar run by Sustainable Food Places yesterday, and we know that all of these things are happening across the UK, and that food partnership work is very much focused at the moment on the response to the cost of living crisis. So it really is a huge part of our work right now. On the enterprise front, of course, we know it's not just households who are going to be facing immense challenges through the cost of living crisis, it's also our food enterprises. So as a local food partnership with support and funding from Sustainable Food Places and our local authority, over the past year in Plymouth, we've been developing a good food economy pilot campaign, which has really had to pivot in response to the cost of living crisis. So what we managed to develop through that is an ongoing survey that's enabling us to track the impacts and identify opportunities for support through the cost of living crisis. This could be anything from social media marketing upskilling through to a peer network, so that enterprises can come together and share their experiences with each other as well. We also have a Good Food Enterprise Directory coming soon with resources for businesses, but also for communities, consumers as well. So a two-pronged approach to both enabling enterprises to access different forms of support and to become involved with initiatives, including things like Better Food Traders, and also equally for consumers, for the people of Plymouth as well, to know where they can access affordable, healthy, sustainable food as well. We're also really excited about a new event that we have, and it was interesting to hear Julia mention the way that customers have pitched in to help growing enterprises, you know, with for example, harvesting and picking and things like that. This new event is called Community of Dragons, and it's really turning on its head the idea of the Dragon's Den TV program, if any of you have seen that, where businesses will pitch their ideas for growth, and they will normally be faced with quite a fearsome panel of business panelists. But what we do instead is we will be inviting members of the community to be able to act as community dragons, hopefully much more friendly, and ultimately they'll be able to share all sorts of skills that they might have, time, possibly money, but not always money by any means at all, and skills that they can share with enterprises to help them to reach their next goals as well, and to support them through what will be very difficult times. So that's happening at Plymouth Community Climate Centre, where we're also really pleased to have some space supported again by the council under a Meanwhile Youth scheme, which is enabling us to put on events at no charge, which is what everybody wants to hear in these times. Finally, as well, on the economic front, tying into all of the work that's going on in the city, the Plymouth Charter was launched as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic to try and really boost Plymouth's local economy. So the work that we're doing as a food partnership is very much chiming with that. They have a special Spend for Plymouth initiative, which is trying to encourage businesses locally to support each other through their procurement policies. So again, we're seeing action at a local authority level to try and, again, boost local economic circular business as well. So finally, I asked the question, what are our superpowers as a local food partnership? And for local food partnerships everywhere really across the UK, and really it seems to me that our strength and our greatest responsibility lies in listening and connecting at and across and between all levels. So from the community grassroots level all the way through to, as I mentioned, local authority level and everything in between. And this is particularly at a time when the voices that most need to be heard are at risk of being lost. So we're really glad, as I mentioned just now, to have some space at our local community climate centre in the centre of the city, which is a really wonderful opportunity for us to be able to hold lots of different talks, discussions, invite people in to share their views about their experiences of food in a variety of accessible, creative ways, and that developed through the Food Plymouth Equality Project over the course of the last 5 years or so. This work will be continuing under new participatory processes development and ready for change strands of work under the Sustainable Food Places movement. So these are ultimately combining to address the need for greater diversity and representation of all kinds within our local food sector. And together we are launching something called Best Food Forward, which is our campaign to grow a good food movement in Plymouth. And listening and connecting is really at the heart of that. And it's going to become all the more important as we go through the cost of living crisis. And as I say, I think being able to listen and connect in order to then be able to adapt and respond is what our role as local food partnerships really is. So finally, if you'd like to learn more, again, I can share links in the chat, but here's how to find us, our website, my email address, and on Twitter and Facebook, we're at Food Plymouth. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for this interesting presentation of the Plymouth experience. And of course, cities are the forefront of dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and now the energy crisis, and the participatory approaches could very much help finding common solutions through listening and connecting. So thank you very much, Sophie. And I will now go over Karen Wohlert, who is will share her experience of the food hubs in Berlin. Thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Francesca. I'm also going to try to share my screen. Okay, here we are. So thank you so much for having invited me to speak here. My name is Karen. I'm the Food Shift 2030 Berlin Lab Leader. I'm also the co-founder of Baumhaus, which is the Treehouse in German, which is a project space for sustainability in Berlin, where we organize one food hub, neighborhood food hub prototype, but we also coordinate and build up a neighborhood food hub network in Berlin. So my perspective I'm going to talk about is how citizens can respond to the cost of a living crisis, but just listening to the other two presentations, I feel like we're really all working on the same solutions. So the solutions are kind of clear what we can do on the local level. It's more the question of how we can put them into action. And so one solution we have maybe here in Berlin is one framework and platform how citizens can take action and also contribute to building up those solutions. So here you can see a map of our Berlin Food Hub network. It's as self-made and colorful as it looks like. So at the moment we have 21 Food Hub initiatives, which are a diverse group of actors, so volunteer groups, but also local project spaces, neighborhood spaces, city-funded social centers who are all working to build up neighborhood food hub activities in their own neighborhoods. So we started this project two years ago. There we had 3 initiatives. Now we are 21 and it's growing up. So what do we mean by neighborhood food hub? For the German speakers here, you can see the word Lebensmittelpunkte, which is rather like translated as food point, which I think is also more to the point of what we're actually doing. So with food hub, you always think of these big centers where you really like work on getting big amounts of foods from the countryside distributed to the city. We are building up a decentral network of food points, which we define as places where neighbors can come together and self-organize activities that bring up the food transition from bottom up. We have, you see at the bottom, these 5 points. So the left one, the orange one, that's called initiatives, which signifies that these food hubs are built up by people in their own neighborhoods. So places, community spaces, or volunteer groups, or a couple of very active citizens start these initiatives themselves. And then it's about organizing basically 2 core activities. The one is Depot, which is organizing space for, on the one hand, support food sharing, food rescuing and distribution activities, but also vegetable boxes, CSA, community supported agriculture depots, so to self-organize those activities. And the second part is kitchens, which is to organize neighborhood coming to, which means to organize neighbors coming together to cook, and then also invite more people to join for dinner or lunch or whatever time it is. And then all these activities are also meeting points for the neighborhood. So also about all the social, cultural part, and the actions means that I think all initiatives also do like singular events, actions. They have ideas of what they could do. So it's a whole colorful bunch of activities. But the core of our definition is to have regular activities, mostly weekly, on the depot and kitchen basis. And this is how it looks in our baumhaus, the treehouse prototype. So we have 1 night per week. Our space turns into a food hub, which means we have 5 vegetable box groups who pick up their shares. There are altogether 80 shares in our cellar. Then people come together and cook. There's a food then being cooked parallel to the vegetable box pickup. So it's like a whole evening of food, people coming together, neighbors walking by, asking us, what is this? Getting some food on a donation base. It's all plant-based food. So this colorful neighborhood food hub activities. And the interesting part is really that we do this only on 1 night per week. And the rest of the week, the space is getting used for other things. So this is a solution that you can put in all kinds of spaces. So we don't need to finance new spaces, but we can put these activities into all kinds of existing spaces. Here's some impressions from our network, from the 20+ initiatives. So many of them don't have built up the weekly activities yet, but they do organize a whole bunch of actions, from cooking to food pickup and so on. So the way we built this up is that on the one hand, we offer a support office. So in our Baumhaus project space, we are 5 people who also work on our own food hubs, and we offer advice, coaching, support to the organization and groups who want to start their own food hub initiatives. So it's this peer-to-peer level, support each other, informal feeling. And this way of working together also extends to working with other local food initiatives. So we know food sharing, we know the local farmers and other groups, and we meet and come together and see what are ways that we can support each other and build the solutions up. And we get support by local administration who provide funding for this project, both on the city level, but also now more and more on the district level. So what this network and platform does is basically that we provide an opportunity for people who want to take action to get active. And this goes both for citizens as neighbors in the neighborhood that can start these food hub initiatives, or just be part of the kitchen team and help cooking the community dinners. But it also works, for instance, for people working in the district administration who say, well, I also want to do something. And then they contact us, and then we meet for coffee and see, okay, what's the collaboration we can do? What are your opportunities? So this way of this framework and story and network also now works with the cost of living crisis. So I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples how we work together on those challenges that have popped up this year, especially. So one challenge on the farmer side is, of course, that the small farms are also affected by the cost of living crisis, especially the CSA farms. So the ones who do have a yearly contract with like a fixed price for the full year, and then the people get a share of the harvest, which on the one hand is good because that means that they have a steady income secured. On the other hand, they have the problem that they can't raise their prices before the end of the year while their costs are going up. So what we can do is we can solve the crisis for them, but we try to support them. So for instance, we met with the farmer and we found some volunteers, and they supported him in building up their marketing and their website and the communication. That also on the local market, they could actually tell the producers, what do we do with the soil? How come our costs? Why is it worth to buy our veggies? Or we supported another farmer's family who were like in a crisis of almost burnout. We found volunteer coach and who would give them free coaching and workshops to figure out the next step. Or we supported them with just organizing Zoom conferences. So it's not providing these big solutions, but it's really being these friends also to the farmers and see what can we do to support you in your day-to-day work. The second crisis we face, at least in Berlin, I don't know how it's in your cities probably as well, that we have less rescued food to distribute. So there is less food being wasted by the supermarkets, which is great on the one hand. On the other hand, there is less free food to give out to the people in need. So what we do is we try to create alternatives. For instance, we step up the community kitchen activities. So we cook also with CSA veggies and with supermarket vegetables that we buy. And if it's all plant-based and like prepared together by neighbors, then it's still affordable, so we can give it out on a donation basis, but it still is a way to provide cheap and healthy food to people, which also, of course, helps with the crisis, which is connected, that people have less money, so neighbors are more in need. So for that, our kitchen activities, of course, support them, but also what we notice that it's a lot about more the experience of the solidarity that also helps, and that we get the connection. So what you just said, Sophie, about the listening and the connection. So that's something that does happen during the cooking a lot. So we talk to people on the eye-to-eye level, and we find out, are they in crisis? Do they need maybe pointed to some social advice program? Or also, do they just maybe need a friend to talk to? So this experience of them being a part of a group, of taking action, of like not just getting top-down welfare, but actually be part of a group that also builds up support for other people, really can strengthen and empower neighbors as well. So I could go on, but I think you also want to go to the panel discussion. And so when I first got asked if I want to participate in this talk, I said no, because I said, I don't think that we do have the solutions to solve the crisis. But I think all the solutions that we see here now is really that we come together and work together to figure out what are our next steps. So in that sense, I also really like to invite you to get in touch with us and to provide us your feedback and ideas and cooperations to help each other move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. The Berlin experience is very inspiring for us and for our Food Accelerator Lab. In fact, one of the main priority action that we would adopt within the next food policy is to set up food hubs to overcome vulnerabilities and to promote social inclusion. But there is also, I think, just to open up the debate and listening to the questions, maybe there is also another aspect that we should take into consideration because of the cost of living crisis. There are some businesses that are experiencing a very deep economic crisis, such as, for instance, in Italy, the smaller pasta producers are in a very are facing challenges in continuing producing and delivering pasta because of the increasing cost of wheat. And they have not the same market power to purchase wheat, while a big company have the possibility to pay for it in a shorter period. So there are two different aspects affecting small businesses. So what do you think could be the an aspect or a response to these different issues? So maybe Julia can provide some inputs to this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know about the geographical distances between those small pasta makers, but I think if they can find a way to purchase collectively, that feels like that would be one solution in terms of purchasing wheat and tackling those prices. And yeah, I mean, in terms of what we've been doing with our members here, someone in the Q&A just asked, we are looking at trying to provide business support for traders, and in this case for pasta makers, because actually, what the problem really is a cash flow crisis, hopefully for many businesses. It's a short-term crisis, we hope. And I think it's a matter of helping people manage their cash flow to get through the next 6 months, maybe 12 months. And after that, we hope things will improve. So, cash flow can be managed in lots of different ways internally. It's obviously tough decisions like reducing your staffing, reducing your opening hours. It may be things like changing your energy provider, looking for a different energy tariff and so on. But then there's also kind of external things, and we are trying to link up traders here in the UK with funders. And we know there are certain funders who will offer a mixture of grants and investment. So that sort of blended finance, or people can go for straightforward kind of debt finance if they can get it. And then also things like crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is an amazing way to build a community and to build support for your enterprise. And in all the ways we've seen where, communities coming together and people as customers, as citizens supporting enterprises, if you do crowdfunding in the right way, it not only brings in money, but it also brings in goodwill and skills, and people can donate time. But also, once you've had someone be part of your crowdfunder, they're very likely to become a customer and stay as a loyal customer. So you build loyalty. So we've been encouraging people to look at crowdfunding as a really good way forward, albeit time consuming, but if you get it right, it can really pay off.
Thank you, Julia. Maybe Sophie would like to add something about community involvement and bottom-up support.
Sure, and I think I can echo a lot of what Julia's just said about creating that community around our enterprises and really harnessing that grassroots level of support. And that's what we're attempting to do with our upcoming Community of Dragons event. It's a very small scale, it's very tiny step forward, but we hope that will become something which can be as established as the 10-year local entrepreneur forum that's been running in Totnes, which is doing amazing things for not just food but all sorts of social enterprises in Totnes and National Bay as well. So there's real hope, I think, for community level support initiatives like that. And as well, I mentioned the Meanwhile Youth Scheme that we're benefiting from at Food Plymouth at the moment. So an old Waterstones bookshop that's been empty for a few years has been a collaboration of different partners, including the council, have come together to be able to provide that space for free for sort of pop-up initiatives. And that's happening for retailers across the city as well. So again, where rents and utilities might be becoming, a very difficult thing to manage, having more opportunities around meanwhile use and pop-up spaces is something that if councils and local authorities are able to do, that's going to be a real support as well, even if it's just enabling a business to be able to come in for a day or a morning or an afternoon a week, but still to be able to have some space as well.
Thank you, Sophie. I don't know if Karen would like to jump in, or maybe, yeah, further elaborating on, I mean, it's great to have, to rely on local networks to overcome, mitigate social and economic pressures. But do you think that there could be other solution in these current times to afford businesses price vulnerabilities and other competing issues among organic products, climate change, sustainability, local products? I mean, what do you think about it?
Well, I think the one thing that gives me hope here is that I meet so many people who actually want to do something about it. So also many in the people, they are interested to support the local farmers and the producers. So there is a lot of attention to it and goodwill. The question is, do we find a way to channel this into real action that helps? And one thing that we do with the food hubs is that we, for instance, like I said, shift more towards also processing the local produce from the farmers, which builds up a way to sell those vegetable boxes then directly to the food hubs, and then we cook together with it, and then more people can afford it by just paying the share of what their soup costs, basically, which is, if it's just carrots and cabbage, not so much, even if it's organic vegetables. So yeah, so this is one way how we try to build a broader base for them to sell their veggies. Yeah, I think it feels like all still very small steps, but like I said, there is a lot of will and attention, and yeah, and we'll try. we try and see how it goes.
Thank you, Karen. Are there other questions from the audience?
Francesca, I can also just
Yeah.
chip in with a small response to that question, Sophie, as well. I think, it's to say that the balance between, access to affordable food and then the question of sustainability, it becomes more fraught as the cost of living crisis deepens. So I think, again, it's about how can we ensure that the food which is coming through emergency food aid provision, is as healthy as it can be, is as accessible as it can be. And I think we need to do everything that we can to support that side of food aid. And as I say, we much prefer to transition towards that sense of food access and food agency, seeing social supermarket type setups as well, where people are able to go to a community centre, and rather than have to take what they're given, they're able to choose and select their own food. And often, fruit and vegetables will be part of that, completely for free as well as a standard sort of package as well. So really making sure that access to fruit and veg, best fruit and veg as much as possible is going to be really important. But like I said, that sort of question of, it's got to be about food access first and foremost, and then the sustainability is, unfortunately, I think is going to take a back seat in lots of people's minds at the moment.
Thank you, Sophie. In Italy, for instance, in our fall, one of the main issue rising up by our innovators was about education. Education consumers, educate citizens in having sustainable purchasing patterns, and understand the value of food, which is no more a commodity, but is a common good, which could reward the work of farmers, smallholder farmers, above all in southern Italy. And so the education could be one, has been identified as one of the main challenge to favor a food system transition. So citizens are more aware of what do they eat, and so this aspect was very risen up.
Can I just add to that? I mean, I think you're right about education and helping people understand this, the concept of the real cost of food, and that often the real costs are not intrinsic to the product when you're looking at conventional farming methods. But I think also that education role, it can be done in a really fun way. So in some of the ways that Sophie's talked about, in terms of community coming together, and Karen, and also from my perspective, from a sort of retail perspective, educating people, it can be done in a really fun way, where you're running events that are about food and tasting and drinking wine, and it, like, everyone loves food. It's a common language. And so I think quite often we're tempted to sort of market the solution to people who are kind of not already eating organic food, to market it as like, you must eat this way because otherwise the planet is doomed, and this kind of real fear, guilt kind of marketing. And I feel like, actually, no, there are lots of really great public benefits. So we need to talk about the positives. It's better for the planet, it's better for farmers and communities, it's healthy, and it's delicious. Like, I just really wish that the word delicious was in every conversation that we have about organic, sustainable food production. Like, we've got to encourage people to see it as something that is kind of aspirational or kind of desirable. It's like just trying to acknowledge that obviously all those difficult decisions that people are making about price and sustainability and so on, but I think we have to kind of concentrate on the positives and the deliciousness that we have.
Thank you, Julia. There is one controversial questions about supporting vertical farming or urban gardens and organic farming, while the expectation of the rising population in 2050 is around 10 billion people. So how the questions of one of our participants is how to combine these competing aspects. If there is an answer to this.
Well,
please, Karen.
Well, I think it definitely shows clearly that we don't have the solution for everything here. It's just one part, and we need action on all levels, on government level, on national level, on international level. And so I don't think what we do here will solve all these crises. And a bit, not like contrary, but in addition to what you, Julia, said, we also experience here in Berlin that many people really are aware of the climate breakdown and other crises, and they want to do something, and it's often the question whether they think there is still any real change possible. So I think what's so interesting with Food Shift is that we connect these different levels. So that we say that it is about the local level and the citizens, but we also work together with the government and with the scientists, and it is connected on the EU level. So I think it's important that we stay very aware and smart, that we don't get stuck in like our little happy neighborhood world, but that we say, okay, so the goal is the food system transformation, and we do what we can, but what are questions or like challenges that can for real only be solved on national or even international level. So I don't think we can feed everyone in Berlin through urban gardening and vertical farming. It can be just an addition, but a good one and a nice one, both for education and for sanity of the people to have food around and to learn how it works. There is a study that we could feed Berlin just from the region of Brandenburg, which is the state around Berlin. It would be possible. Practically, it's not possible because the ground is owned by big investment companies. So that again requires solutions and actions on a different level. So yeah, I think keep all these in mind, do what we can, but also make sure that we take action on the right level for really moving the transition forward.
Thank you, Karen. Another question connected to this, your conclusion is, do you think, or the question comes from the audience, the community-based projects are a good start. And do you think they could be scaling up, or which are the next steps required to scale up these models, community-based approach models? This is, for instance, one of the activities we are implementing in the Food Shift 2030 project, the acceleration of food system innovations. So what do you think about scale up and acceleration of these community-based initiatives? Please, Sophie.
So I think really the key, I mean, particularly for things like the Community of Dragons local entrepreneur forums, is that we don't necessarily sort of want to scale up, but we want to see them proliferate in lots of different settings. So, and it's the same thing with the cooperation towns, the bulk buying cooperatives as well. You're not wanting to necessarily see things scale, but you're wanting to see things multiply. So for me, that would be what I would recommend is, you know, once these things are up and running, let's replicate them again in a different setting, with fresh groups of people who are bringing their own take and their own ideas to things.
And I think you have to remember everywhere's different. You know, it depends on your region. It depends on, you know, for example, gleaning, which is this process of salvaging crops from fields where farmers are told by supermarkets, we don't want your produce anymore. So it sits in the field, people will go and salvage it, and it's often used in community kitchens. You know, that works really well in areas like Kent and Essex and, you know, farming areas, Lincolnshire and so on. But that's not going to work in central London or in the Scottish Highlands where it's all sheep and there's no food. So I think some of these different, you know, different projects work in different places. But absolutely what Sophie said, it's really about replicating. And, you know, I think there are you know, there are some of the umbrella groups like Good Food Places and the work that Sustain does, and lots of other organisations. Feedback is another one, where they do these pilot projects and then they offer kind of toolkits to roll out, and they look at replicating that. Yeah, it's a really good way forward. Karen, you had something to add?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, with the Food Hub network, I've never seen a local project that got so fast support and that was really on the growth scale so fast. So just 2 years ago, we were like, there were 3 volunteer initiatives. And since we started to really develop the concept, we got from the beginning support by the local administration funding. Through Food Shift, we can work together with scientists. They did the impact assessment of our prototype. They just published a study for outscaling the food hubs. So they did the study where they showed that we need 231 of food hubs in Berlin. So according to the 15-minute city in every neighborhood, that people can walk there in 15 minutes. And like just like 1 year ago, I would have said, okay, that's a nice vision, but I don't think it's possible. But by now, I actually think it's possible because we get contacted every week by new spaces and by like places that don't do food action yet. So like neighborhood centers, community centers, foundations, offices who want to join. So I think there is the will of people to take action, and I mean, we should talk in like in maybe 6 or 8 months again, but I think by then we're going to have maybe doubled our number of initiatives, and this is because there's this unprecedented support of government and science and a whole bunch of organizations from civil society and beyond. So we'll see.
I think we can go through 2 more questions and then come to the wrap up of the webinar. There are many interesting questions in the chat, and we will answer later on. And the 2 questions are about, the first one about the volunteers that collaborate to these initiatives, the range of age they have. And the second question is about people that are well educated but have less time to prepare food, suitable food at home, and maybe they are obliged, compelled to choose for less healthy food and fast food. So these 2 questions. Who is willing to reply? Please, Julie.
I think it's a really good question. And I think, you know, this is the reality of people's lives, that people are time poor, and when energy prices are so high, you don't want to spend like 45 minutes roasting a root vegetable until it's edible, you know. So I think we have to kind of be realistic about that. And I think sometimes the idea of like getting your weekly veg box is a slightly kind of idealized view of how everyone lives. And I would encourage traders to, you know, potentially begin to rethink that, or just think, you know, what can we offer people that is possibly partly processed, you know, whether it's just a case of like washing potatoes and carrots, or whether it's preparing beetroot and selling it in plastic. And obviously there are all these debates around what your customers actually want, but you know, I think being realistic about how people eat and what people eat, and also, you know, the format of a veg box. Do people necessarily want 10 completely random different vegetables, or do they want like a whole lot of tomatoes and a whole lot of aubergines or something. You know, it's like, what are you actually going to cook with and use that's practical? But I think then the other side of it is obviously educating people. And, you know, I know the question included this idea of people who are educated, but I think if you can make it easy for people to have some like really quick recipes, maybe even, you know, for community groups or for traders to do classes or to do some kind of like training and workshops so people can learn together about how to cook, that, you know, they might be some of the solutions.
Thank you, Julia. Are there other replies from our speakers?
I think I can only really echo what Julia said. Absolutely, I think that is key. And, you know, we are seeing in Plymouth, there is increased demand for things like learning how to cook, you know, really great tasty stuff using a slow cooker, for example, which, you know, might be, you know, a slightly more attractive option in terms of not having to constantly be monitoring what's on the stove and things like that. So definitely we are seeing an increased need for education in a way that makes it fun and enjoyable as well, so that maybe, you know, that small window of time that you are able to spend cooking, even if it's very small, can actually be something that could possibly be enjoyable as well. That would be the idea.
So thank you very much. I think we can wrap up the main conclusions, the main aspect discussed in this webinar. So there is from the one hand the importance and the relevance of food local initiatives to overcome the current crisis, but also to have a long-term responses. So cooperation all along the at the governance, economic and social level is very important. This is what we saw also in our FAL, where small businesses, local producers, organic farmers are very much addressing social inclusion matters within their own business, and they are attracting also consumers by participation in their activities, both at cultural or practical level. On the other side, there are, of course, other issues, global issues that could not be addressed just at local level. But we need different multi-level governance to take things together and to balance organic with a growing population and the role of cities toward the increasing population, and how to valorize the common goods we have. So I think we can, if there are no more reactions from the speakers or the audience, I think we can go through the video. It's just shooting now, link to our previous roundtable in Wrocław. Please, thank you.